Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of what's going to be a 3-part series called Paleo Kitchen Essentials. This is part 2, what's in my pantry. The little clip you just saw was basically the shelves of my pantry, and although they look really disorganized, there's definitely an underlying order to them. I put the most primal and most paleo ingredients that I have in the house in the easiest to reach location, the middle and just above and below. And then I put the less favourable food types that I still have a little bit of, whether it be for entertaining guests or other people in my house that still eat them or whatever, at the bottom and at the top of the pantry. I find that this way when I open the pantry, the first things that I see are the things that I want to be eating, and I'm not so tempted by having, you know, a giant bowl of lollies right in front of my face. That kind of thing would be down on the bottom shelf. So what I'm going to do today is just go through each shelf and what's in it, and all of the things that I think are essential for primal or paleo kitchens, and the kind of stuff that I use them for, because a lot of this is just raw ingredients that I cook with. So let's get started. Right, so my bottom shelf I'm not going to go into super detail about, because as you can probably see by the number of packaged items on this shelf, they are not primal or paleo in the slightest. So this next shelf is more of the same sort of thing. A lot of this is slightly less evil than the bottom shelf, but not by a whole lot. So now that we're moving on from the less desirable shelves, I figured that I would go through each item one by one and show you guys the absolute essentials for any primal or paleo kitchen. Now my main 3 shelves that I keep this kind of food on is this one, this one, and this one. And as you can see, when I stand in front of it, it's pretty much the first thing I'm going to see. And it's the bottom shelves and the very top shelves I'm not even going to notice. So this is where I keep the best of my food and the most primal and nutritious food that I have. So I've taken out this shelf, and I'll start with it, I guess. So I have my giant almond meal, which you guys have seen before. I go through this pretty quick, and it's important not to keep it for too long because it does tend to go rancid in the fridge, and you don't want to be eating rancid almond meals or any kind of natural fats that have gone rancid, because they can cause inflammation in your body. So I have a giant one, but that's because I go through this stuff pretty quickly. Most people, you would only have just a small bag, and try and air seal it to keep the rancidity process, rancidification, from happening too quickly. I have sunflower seeds as well. They're pretty good. I like to chuck them into any like breakfast muesli, or sometimes I put them in salads. I try and keep some kind of seed on hand at all times, and at the moment it's sunflower seeds. And the next thing that I have in this shelf is honey. This is bulk honey that I buy by the, I think it's by the kilo. Yeah. And then I also have local honey. Now the difference between the bulk honey and the local honey that I have is the local honey is made from pollen and flowers and things that are in my local area. If I'm having any pollen allergies, then it's great to have local honey, because that will fortify and immunify? I'm really struggling with words today. It will make you immune to allergies, or at least help you a little bit. I also have raw honey over here. I have a whole lot of honey, and I use every different thing I use for something different. This is great in smoothies, raw honey, whereas the bulk stuff I can just use in cooking. Also, the bulk stuff has a very different flavour to this raw organic honey and this local honey. These are made from eucalyptus and like gum trees and just Australian bush honey, whereas this is orchard honey. So it's got a much more like flowery, fruity kind of flavour, whereas these guys are like the hardcore, sugary, sweet honeys. And then I have some tin food. I try not to eat too much tin food, but it's just handy sometimes to have stuff like tomato paste and peach slices, or some kind of tinned fruit, for in case you run out of your fresh fruit. I have gluten-free baking powder, which is great for making paleo baking things, because obviously you don't use self-raising flour. It's great to have something like this on hand for baking with. Next, I have apple cider vinegar, which I use in salads as a salad dressing with olive oil. This is certified A-grade apple cider vinegar, and it is beautiful. It alkalizes your body. I know a lot of people that are like real fitness freaks will just do a shot of this after they've exercised, and apparently it's really good for you in that way. I've also mixed this with maple syrup in the past, like maple syrup, apple cider vinegar, and then water, and that's like quite a nice little drink. It's got a sweet and sour kind of flavour to it, I guess. So it's quite good too. Then I have my coconut oils. I have two types of coconut oil. The first is this one. It's also called coconut butter. It's virgin, cold pressed and unrefined organic coconut butter. And then I have this kind of coconut butter / oil, and this one is just virgin / expeller pressed organic. So this one tastes like coconuts. When you cook with it, you will taste the coconut. If you mix it in with something, if you have it in a smoothie, you'll taste the coconuttiness inside of it. Whereas this one does not. It's just like cooking with olive oil or any other kind of flavourless oil. So I like to have both so that I can use whatever I need whenever I need. So those are my oils. Flax meal. It's really good for inside smoothies and with a lot of paleo baking. I use it not as much as the almond meal, definitely, and that's why I've got it in a resealable pack. And this is Australian organic flax meal. Then I have some fresh nuts, walnuts, and almonds. I'm almost out of almonds. Again, I try not to buy too much so that I eat them and so that they're fresh. And then I have some fish sauce. This is premium quality Vietnamese style fish sauce, and you can use it as a dipping sauce or in Asian cooking. The ingredients are anchovy extract, salt and water, and that's it. And it's really, really good for that umami flavour that a lot of dishes call for in Asian cooking. And finally on this shelf I have my berry nut boost mix, which I use a lot of the time for breakfast, and I'll show you the recipe for the breakfast that I make with this stuff at some point in the near future. But the ingredients in this are simply almonds, sultanas, walnuts, goji berries, blueberries. Now the blueberries and the sultanas have both got sunflower oil to stop them from going like gross because they're not completely dried, and there's also a little bit of sugar in on the blueberries. This annoys me, and I wish I could find something that didn't have this kind of stuff mixed in with it. I know you can get sultanas by themselves and they're just dried grapes, but I haven't found a boost mix like this where, you know, I can use them in the morning and just kind of chuck it in without having to pre-mix it myself. So this is what I have at the moment. So that's that shelf, all done. Now this shelf here is entirely loose leaf tea. And I think what I'm going to have to do is, because there's so much on this shelf, is I'm going to have to do a tea video for you guys, because tea is kind of one of my passions and it's my favourite beverage in the whole world, and I love tea. So I think the best thing for me to do is, instead of quickly going through everything here now, is to do an everything you need to know about tea, and I'll post it up and you guys can realise the extent of my insanity. So let's get on to the next shelf. Now this shelf is slightly less populated than this shelf here because it's sort of above eye level. Of course I've got the tea at eye level. So I'm just going to go through what's in it. Coconut milk. Again, it's in a tin, and I do worry about the BPA, you know, evilness of the tinned food, but I can't find coconut milk where I live that isn't in a tin, so this is what I use. And I have another one going at the moment in the fridge, and when I get to part 3 of this video, I'll show you my fridge and you'll see it in there. But yes, so I have coconut milk. Okay, this is my olive oil. I like to buy Australian extra virgin olive oil, and I like to make sure that it says on the ingredients 100% Australian extra virgin olive oil. I buy Australian because I live in Australia and it's going to be fresher if I buy it locally. If you live in another country, buy your own country's local olive oil, unless olives don't grow in your country, in which case try and get as close as you can and as fresh as you can. This olive oil has a very robust flavour, and I really like that in my cooking. I generally just use this in salads, although I will sometimes saute on low heat some stuff, but I generally use the solid coconut oil for cooking and then this for salads. Make sure that your olive oils have not been cut with things like canola oil. When you buy them, you want 100% olive oil because that's the healthiest for you. I also have some tuna here. The tuna that I buy is, I mean, I don't always buy this brand, but this brand is just in spring water. And it is absolute 99% fat-free, dolphin-safe, drift net-free, local tuna. Responsibly fished. And I don't know, I can just buy this at the supermarket, but I try not to buy the ones that are in oil because even if they're with olive oil, you'll often find that they're not with just olive oil, they will be with sunflower oil or canola oil or another one of those factory fats that we like to avoid. So I just buy them in spring water. That means there's no extra salt in them. It's just tuna and water in a tin. And I mean, really, you don't need salt in these things. The tin does the preserving for you. So the salt is completely unnecessary. I have some maple syrup as well. If you live in Australia, get the most expensive maple syrup you can find, because the cheapest stuff is imitation maple syrup. If you live in the Northern Hemisphere, try and get the cheaper maple syrup, which is B-grade maple syrup, which has more minerals in it. In Australia, you can't really get B-grade maple syrup. I've never seen it on the shelves in my life. I've only ever seen the A-grade maple syrup, and that is because it's not worth exporting A-grade maple syrup all the way from Canada to Australia. But if you live in Canada or the US, you will be able to get B-grade maple syrup, which is better for you. So try and get the B-grade and not the A-grade, which should be cheaper for you guys too. I have more honey. This is ironbark honey, this is eucalypt honey. I tend to have a whole lot going at once, you may have noticed. Coconut cream. I use this for cooking, and I also use it in tea. I generally try and avoid using milk in my tea because it's not primal, not paleo, and I find that coconut cream actually does a better job than the coconut milk. It lasts longer, and you only need sort of a small amount to make it nice and rich and creamy. And in that amount of heat, with a hot tea obviously, when you put the coconut cream inside of it, it just melts away and you actually get a nice even kind of creaminess to the tea, and I really like that. Avoid using this in smoothies. Always use your coconut milk in smoothies, and I think it's because the coconut cream is so much fattier, it kind of flocculates in the smoothie, and you end up with like balls of chewy, disgusting coconuttiness that you don't want in your smoothie at all. Macadamia nuts. So macadamia nuts, almonds and walnuts are probably my 3 favourite nuts, and I always have them on hand. This is coconut flour. I use this in a lot of baking and a lot of cooking. I make meatballs with these. It's really, really nice. Coconut flour is great. Sometimes I have desiccated coconut, but not today as well. Seaweed. This is fantastic. If you are using fancy sea salts like I do, you won't be getting enough iodine. Seaweed has that iodine in it. You can mix this, especially into Asian dishes where you're using the fish sauce. This goes really well as well. Or otherwise, if you have miso, which I do very occasionally even though it contains soy in it, it goes really well in miso, and it's more important to have iodine than to not have soy. So make sure you get this and you put it in some of your food. Obviously if you're having iodized table salt, then you don't need to worry about it, but for some reason I just keep buying the fancy pink salts or whatever, and so it's important to have this as well. Down the back here is a whole lot of stuff I don't use that often. I have whole honeycomb, which is pretty tasty. You can actually chew on the honeycomb and you end up with kind of a ball of beeswax in your mouth when you finish on it, and it's really, really nice actually. And this is local as well, so it's good for allergies. I have cacao powder. This is the raw cacao powder, and I'm actually finding that this isn't as nice as the Dutch processed stuff. And that is because when you put this in a smoothie, it feels like it's still like a little bit grainy. It doesn't completely dissolve. And also there's a chocolate kind of sauce that I make, and it's not quite as nice with the raw stuff. So this is almost finished, and I think I'm going to get the Dutch processed again. But apparently this is better for you, so... in here I have a tiny bit of walnut meal. There's not much left though. And vanilla essence, which I use in a lot of paleo baking. If you're wondering what's in my top shelf, I'm an Australian, so it's just got alcohol in it. I'm going to do a separate video on alcohol and on the consumption of alcohol when you're on the paleo diet. Whether it's a good idea and the kinds of alcohol that are the best and worst when you're on a paleo diet. For now, that's all I really have to show you guys. That's what's in my pantry. So make sure you subscribe, and then you'll get to see the rest of my paleo kitchen and also some awesome recipes and that sort of thing. See you in the next video. Bye.